Hey everybody! So a few months ago, I took down a tree for sawing lumber, and I briefly mentioned in the video that I used a special cut to get that tree down because it was a tall, skinny tree, and quite a few people asked for more details on that cut. So I want to talk about that today. And if you look in the background there, you can see the stump that's left of that tree that I cut yesterday using that special felling technique. And so let's turn the camera around and walk up to that tree and talk about this special cut. So here we are walking down my timber trail, and this is really the trail that I'm using to work into a 4-acre property to harvest some southern yellow pine for lumber. And it was tight felling at the beginning, but now that I've got a nice lane, it's real easy to keep dropping trees. And here's the tree I dropped yesterday. This was, I think this was about 16, 17 inches at the base. Pretty nice tree. These run about 70 to 80 feet tall. And so this is what I'd consider to be a tall, skinny tree. When these trees are bunched up tight in a stand like this, they do not develop much of a canopy, so they're skinny even at the top. And that could pose a challenge for felling the tree. And before I talk my way through this cut, I thought we might start with talking over the physics of what happens when you fell a tree. So in a typical tree over here that has a wide canopy, you have weight of that canopy hanging down over the tree, pretty good distance away from the stem or the trunk of the tree. And, under normal conditions, when that tree is just kind of moving around, it'll put different sides of the tree in tension or compression, and the tree, is standing. And that's the way the tree, kind of stays there under normal conditions. Well, when you want to cut that tree down, what you'll do is you'll come over on the side in the direction of the fall you want, and you'll put a notch or a face cut. And what that does is that takes away the ability for that tree to resist compression on that side. Then you come around to the back side and you'll do a back cut, and that takes away the ability for that tree to resist tension on that side. And you've basically taken away the structural properties of that tree. It used to behave kind of like a column, and now you've taken those properties away by, eliminating the compression resistance on one side and the tension resistance on the other. And so the weight of that canopy hanging over creates kind of a little bit of a lever arm that I show there in blue, and that's going to make that tree fall over that way. And that is usually a dead reliable felling method. Always works well for me. When you go to a tall, skinny tree, though, if you do your same notch and back cut, because this tree is so skinny, even at the top, the weight of that canopy is very, very close to the stem, and it has a very small lever arm. And what I found with trees like this, it's almost a 50-50 chance whether it's going to fall in the direction I want it to, or it's going to maybe sit backwards and pinch my saw when I'm working on the back cut. And it's just because there's not enough weight bias in that canopy to create that leverage and drop that tree over. And so one time about 5-6 years ago, I was putting in a road and I was cutting down 20 or 30 trees, and that was the first time I've dealt with pines, tall pines in a tight stand like that. And what I was finding, after the first 10 trees or so, I was like, half of them I had to put a rope on them and to get them to go over in the direction I intended, because they just had no bias. They would not, fall the way that was planned. And when you're putting in a road, you don't have time to be putting a rope on every single tree. I mean, that got old really quick. So I went up to my office and dug out an old logging book I have and looked through different cuts, and it has a lot of different specialty cuts, and it mentioned this particular cut specifically for tall, skinny trees in a stand to help you bias the fall. And I started using it. It worked great then, and it's kind of been one of my favorite tricks ever since. And so I want to talk through the process of making that cut. And I was hoping to do this yesterday when I was actually felling the tree, and I set up the camera and was getting ready, and I'm like, this is going to be stupid. I when I'm sawing a tree, I mean, you got to focus on safety. You got to focus on what the tree's doing. Maybe focus on the wind if it kicks up. There's a lot of things to watch and pay attention to, and that doesn't leave any time for me to make myself look good for the camera. So I decided, well, I'm not going to even attempt to video this while I'm felling the tree. But later on, when I was cleaning up, I was looking at the stump and the butt of the tree, and I had all the pieces, and I'm like, you know what? I can talk through this probably even better as kind of a reenactment with the different pieces of the tree. So that's what I want to do now. So, the first step in this cut, you come to the front in the direction you want the tree to fall. You put in your notch or your face cut, and there's a couple different methods for this. You could have both of them angled, bottom flat, top angled, top flat, bottom angled, and there's different names for those. They all have pluses and minuses, but in this case I made the bottom cut flat and the top cut angled, and so there's the notch, and again, that's going to relieve the ability of this tree to resist compression on this side. Now, in a normal cut, you'd walk around to the other side of the tree and do your back cut, but here, after you do your notch, step 2 is to take your bar and plunge right into your face cut, and plunge until the bar and chain comes out the back of the tree. And what that does is that leaves a nice little slot back here, and a slot like that is just perfect to accept a felling wedge. And so step 3, put your felling wedge in there and tap it into moderate tightness, but at that point you really just want to kind of hold it there. Step 4 would be to come along and make your back cut, but instead of a back cut all the way across the tree, you're going to make a back cut on each side, one here and then one over here, and you leave this holding strap in the back alone. This you can make this as narrow as an inch on a real small tree. Here I kept it, I don't know, it's about 3 inches. That was probably too much because I really had a whale on the wedge, but you really just need this, I'd say, anywhere from an inch to an inch and a half to 2 inches. It's just kind of a temporary strap to hold that tree. So at that point, you can turn off your chainsaw, put it off to the side, put it somewhere safe, and grab your axe, and you begin to drive this wedge in. And as you do, you can see it's lifting up the top. What it's going to do is it's going to pop the grain, any remaining grain that's holding basically in the sides of that strap, and it's going to jack the tree up and over, and it's going to fall over in the direction that you want. And so it comes over, and you can see what's left. Here's your hinge wood on each side, and the hinge is very important. That's really what directs the fall. It kind of lets the tree fold over, when it's got no ability to resist compression here or tension here. The last thing that's controlling what it does is that hinge. So very important you always maintain a good prominent hinge. If you cut through the hinge, man, that tree can do anything, and it's gonna be uncontrollable if you cut through the hinge. So try and always leave a really good prominent hinge. But you can see what happened here is when this wedge went in, it basically sheared that grain over here and over here. And actually there was another piece in here that popped out too, but it's basically sheared that grain loose, and then that wedge helped provide a gravity bias just by inclining the tree and forced it over. And at that point, physics take over, and everything from there on happens like a normal felling job. But here you've got just really nice specific control. You're not going to ever pinch your saw. The tree's not going to do anything surprising. It's not going to want to come back on you. It's going to go in the direction you want. And this is a pretty easy cut to do. One thing I guess I should point out, to do this, I'm making a plunge and a bore cut. You need to make sure you're using a non-safety chain when you do that, because a safety chain will not do that type of cut very well. You also, it'd be good to really have some experience and confidence doing plunge and bore cuts. You really need to lead with the lower part of the nose of the bar. That's where the cut needs to start. Try not to let that upper part of the nose of the chain and the bar catch on anything, because it's going to create a kickback, or in a case like this, it's going to make that saw steer and possibly screw up your cut. So be very careful if you're doing plunger bore cuts. Practice somewhere else before you come to a important tree or a dangerous situation like this. But that's the cut. It works like a charm. I don't remember the name of this cut, and I've since misplaced my logging book. I'm sure I'll find it someday, but so many of these cuts have special names. Sometimes they're named after the place where they were originated. Sometimes they're named after a guy. I don't remember the name of this cut. If anybody knows it, please let me know in the comments. And I guess that's it for today. Thank you for watching.